Greetings, explorers of the impossible. Miles here. And today I'm going to take you on a dark and fascinating dive into human history. We're going to talk about witches, the persecutions that devastated entire cities, the most absurd trials, executions at the stake, the most famous cases like Salem, classic symbols like broomsticks and black cats, and even how all of this still echoes in the modern world. It's a story of fear, power, and collective hysteria. Are you ready? Then hold on tight. You're watching Miles Insight.
Miles Insight. Miles Insight. Miles Insight.
The history of witches begins long before the horror movies you all love so much. In the 15th and 16th centuries in Europe, anyone who didn't fit the mold could be accused of witchcraft. Widows, elderly women, midwives, healers with knowledge of herbs, and even men who stood out too much. Being accused of witchcraft was like a death sentence. While on other planets I've visited, healers are considered guardians of life. Here on Earth, they were turned into monsters in service of the devil. It's curious how you take those who help the most and turn them into targets. And the numbers are frightening. It is estimated that between 40,000 and 60,000 people were executed between the 15th and 18th centuries. Most of them were women. And make no mistake, many of these executions were motivated by envy, personal revenge, or even disputes over land and inheritance. All it took was someone to whisper, "She's a witch," and that was it. Your life could end right there. It's fascinating and at the same time terrifying to see how fear can become such a powerful weapon. In fact, on other planets, plasma weapons are dangerous, but human fear can be even more lethal. One of the most famous cases happened in Salem in 1692. There, a group of girls began having convulsions and strange behaviors, which could have been explained by neurological diseases or even poisoning from fungus in the wheat, but was seen as proof of demonic possession. The town went into collapse. More than 200 people were accused, 20 were executed. 19 of them hanged and one crushed under stones for refusing to confess. It was living proof of how the unknown could be a death sentence. And believe it or not, even a dog was accused of being an ally of the witches. If that's not the height of mass hysteria, I don't know what is. Well, actually, I do know. I've seen planets declare intergalactic war over a flag's color. But even so, accusing a dog is hard to top. But Salem was not an isolated case. Let's go to Scotland in the year 1591. Agnes Sampson, a respected midwife, was accused of conjuring storms against King James VI. In short, the guy went out in the rain and blamed his neighbor. Under torture, they forced an absurd confession out of her, that she had participated in a witch's sabbath where she conjured lightning and thunder. As if humans could actually do that. You haven't even reached that level yet. She was strangled and then burned. The scene was so shocking that it went down as one of the cruelest executions in Scotland. The irony? On my home planet, causing storms is basic stuff. The real challenge is creating meteor showers. In Germany, the city of Bamberg became notorious for a true epidemic of witch hunts. Between 1626 and 1631, hundreds of people were executed, including even members of the local elite. One of the most disturbing cases was that of Johannes Junius, the mayor of Bamberg, who was accused of witchcraft. He was tortured until he wrote a confession, saying he had made a pact with the devil. Yes, you heard that right. But in a secret letter sent to his daughter, he told the truth, that he was innocent, but couldn't endure the pain any longer. That letter survived, and to this day stands as real testimony to the insanity of that era. Humanity, you are insane! Finding this weird? Relax. This is just the introduction. Like the video and follow the channel to see just how much human stories can get worse. I mean, get better. Now getting back to the topic, and what about the methods of judgment? Get ready, because now we're entering the territory of limitless cruelty. One of the most commonly used was the water test. They would throw the person into a river. If they floated, they were a witch. If they sank, they were innocent, but probably already dead. Another method was the needle test. The accuser would stab the victim's body, looking for an insensitive spot, which would be the mark of the devil. A simple wart could be enough to condemn someone. Humans created a perfect system so that no one would get out alive. I swear, if you took this logic to an intergalactic meeting, they'd laugh until they fell off their floating chairs. And the executions, of course, became a spectacle. The bonfires attracted crowds who gathered to watch. There were even people selling food and drinks as if it were a festival. In other places, like England and Salem, hanging was the preferred method. Meanwhile, in certain parts of Europe, beheading was seen as more merciful. Mercy? That word loses its meaning when we're talking about cutting off heads in public squares, don't you think? It reminds me of the arena games on Mars, except there they use clones. And as we can see, it wasn't only women who were accused, even though they were the majority. Men were also targeted. In some regions of Germany and Switzerland, they made up as much as a third of those executed. Many times they were priests, doctors, or anyone who dared to challenge the power of the church and local authorities. In other words, it wasn't about witchcraft, it was about maintaining control. The same thing happens in various space colonies. If you challenge the order, they always find a creative way to silence you. But let's talk about the most well-known figures. Tituba, a slave of Caribbean origin, was the first to be accused in Salem. Under torture, she admitted to having visions and speaking with the devil, which only fueled the panic even more. Ursula Southwell, known as Mother Shipton, became famous in England as a prophetess. She was not executed, but her image has remained associated with the witch stereotype to this day. And in France, Jeanne d'Arc, the national heroine herself, was accused of witchcraft by the English and burned at the stake in 1431. Not because she was a witch, but because she challenged the enemy with leadership and courage. Humans, once again, calling witchcraft anything you can't control. Now, about the classic symbols. I love this part. The flying broomstick originated from rituals in which hallucinogenic ointments were used on the broom handles, producing the sensation of flying. The cauldron was a Celtic symbol of fertility, but it ended up becoming an icon of witchcraft because it was where potions were prepared. The black cat, which in many cultures was a sign of luck and protection, became a supposed companion of the devil. What a strange planet. By the way, if I showed up there with my reconnaissance drone, I'm sure they'd call it a devil's artifact. And here's another interesting fact. In 1487, the Malleus Maleficarum, or Hammer of Witches, was published, a manual that explained how to identify, torture, and judge witches. Yes, everything was detailed and thoroughly explained. It became one of the best-selling books of the time, second only to the Bible. The thing is, most of the accusations and methods described were completely absurd, but they were used as the official justification for thousands of deaths. Another interesting fact, some women accused of witchcraft managed to escape the stake precisely by embracing their reputation as witches. Some became legendary figures in their villages, charging for potions, advice, or predictions. In doing so, they managed to survive and even earn popular respect. In other words, they turned the stigma into a weapon for survival. It's as if someone were accused of being an alien and instead of denying it, started selling courses on cosmic wisdom. Not that I'm giving anyone ideas, of course. Over time, especially after the Enlightenment and the advancement of science, witch hunts decreased, but the image of the witch remained alive, first as a villain in stories and later as a figure of resistance. Today, witches are central characters in Halloween movies and TV series. What was once a cause for fear and death has become a symbol of a traditional celebration. You're good at this, turning tragedies into pop fantasy. The lesson is clear. Witches are much more than just a horror story. They represent a dark chapter in humanity, when ignorance and fear spoke louder than reason. And they also show how symbols can be reinterpreted over time. For me, as an alien, this is one of humanity's greatest curiosities, the ability to turn tragedies into myths and myths into Halloween fantasies. On some planets, myths remain just stories. Here you even recycle suffering. Very interesting. So, my explorers, we've seen that witches did exist. Or rather, people accused of witchcraft existed. They suffered horrors, and even today their suffering still echoes as a warning. When you put on a witch costume for Halloween, you might not realize it, but you're carrying centuries of history. In other words, a costume party can also be a walking history lesson. I hope you had fun, learned something, and of course, felt a little more alien in the midst of this crazy humanity. If you enjoyed it, subscribe to the channel and follow us on social media. Tell me in the comments, if you lived back then, would you have been condemned for witchcraft? See you in the next adventure of Miles' Insight.